I never thought my own name would sound like a curse, not from my son's mouth, not from the boy I carried, the boy I fed, the boy I stayed up nights for when he burned with fever. But Tuesday night, as I stood at my kitchen sink rinsing plates, I heard it. Marcus's voice. It floated down the hall like a shadow, deep and careless. He didn't know I was home, didn't know I had set my grocery bags on the counter and turned off the car engine quietly. Didn't know that my feet still knew how to move softly, the way I used to sneak into his room when he was small, to check if his chest rose and fell while he slept. "Yeah, Keisha," he said, his voice low but not low enough. "Once we close on the house, we'll make sure Mama doesn't get too comfortable. This place is for us and Darnell. She already gave the money. That's all we needed." That's all we needed. The words sank like stones. Heavy, cold, unforgiving. I froze, dish rag in hand, that warm water running down my wrist. A plate slipped back into the sink with a dull clatter. Keisha's voice chimed in then, smooth and sharp. "Exactly. She won't even know what's happening until we've settled in. We don't owe her explanations." Marcus chuckled. A sound I hadn't heard from him in weeks, not directed at me anyway. That sound pierced more than the words. I stood still, afraid even my breathing would give me away. My chest rose shallow, my heart knocking like it wanted out. And then I heard the door to the back porch open, close, and their footsteps fade. I leaned on the counter, pressing my wet hand to the wood. "That's all we needed," I whispered to myself. Over and over, like a bad prayer. For a long time I didn't move, just stood there, staring at the window above the sink. Outside, dusk had fallen. The streetlight buzzed and flickered, moths darting around it. The house smelled faintly of chicken grease from the meal I had cooked for them last Sunday. The leftovers still sat in the freezer, untouched. I thought about the day Marcus was born, how I screamed into a pillow at County General, gripping the sheets until my knuckles turned white. His father had been gone 2 years by then, killed in a car wreck on the interstate. I was 23. My mama whispered in my ear, "He's all you got now, Eleanor, all you got." And Lord, how I lived by those words. I went to my bedroom and pulled the old notebook from the top dresser drawer, the blue-covered ledger I kept like scripture. Every page told a story. My handwriting, cramped and careful. Dates, amounts, little notes in the margin. June 14, 2018, paid $3,500 for reception hall rental, Marcus and Keisha wedding. December 3, 2019, covered $7,200 on auto loan after Marcus lost job. April 22, 2020, twins born premature, NICU bills $5,000. Smaller notes filled the rest. $400, school clothes. $250, groceries. $600, light bill, shut-off notice. I ran my hand down the column of numbers. My chest tightened as I reached the bottom, where the ink bled darker, as if I had pressed harder when I wrote. Total, $42,800. $42,800 in 5 years. My savings, my retirement cushion, my safety net. All gone into their hands. And to Marcus, it was nothing but. That's all we needed. I sat on the edge of my bed, notebook open on my lap. The night ticked by, the clock on my nightstand marking each minute with an irritating steady click. I thought about the nights I had stayed awake sewing patches onto Marcus's jeans when he was 13. The years I packed lunches with peanut butter sandwiches, wrapped in wax paper, because we couldn't afford the little Ziploc bags. The way I skipped dentist visits so he could have braces. How I walked to work in old shoes so he could play basketball with decent sneakers. All of it blurred together now, swallowed whole by one careless sentence. I whispered it again, like I couldn't stop myself. That's all we needed. The next morning, I woke heavy, like my body had been carrying weights all night. I made coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the kitchen table. My phone lay face up, screen dark. I typed a short text to Marcus. "Son, can we talk?" I pressed send, stared at the screen, waited. Minutes turned to hours. The reply never came. By evening, I tried again, this time calling. It rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. I left a message. My voice sounded weaker than I wanted it to. "Marcus, it's Mama. I'd like to hear from you." Nothing. The second day I called Keisha. Straight to voicemail again. I left another message, quieter this time. I'm here if you need me. Silence pressed back. The third day I didn't call, didn't text, just sat in my chair by the window and watched the street outside. Children ran past with backpacks, neighbors mowed their lawns. Life kept moving, like mine hadn't been cracked open. And in that silence, I felt something grow. Not just pain, something harder, something sharper. Resolve. On the evening of the third day, I reached for my little brown address book, the kind with worn pages and curling corners. My finger traced down until I found the number I needed. Miss Davis. She had sat 3 pews ahead of me at church for the last 10 years. Tall, elegant, with glasses that caught the light. A lawyer. I had baked her peach cobbler once when her mother passed. I dialed. Miss Davis, this is Eleanor. I need some help. Legal help. Her voice was steady. Of course, Eleanor. Why don't you come by tomorrow afternoon? We'll talk everything through. For the first time in days, my chest loosened. That night, before I went to bed, I walked back to the sink where it all began. The plate still sat there, unwashed, at the bottom of the basin. I picked it up, dried it with a towel, and slid it into the cabinet. One plate, one small thing back in its place. I whispered to myself, tomorrow I'll put more back in order. And I believed it. When I woke the next morning, sunlight streamed across my quilt, pale and golden. It reminded me of mornings long ago, when Marcus was a boy and I'd wake him with the smell of oatmeal on the stove. I closed my eyes and saw him small again. Sleepy eyes, messy hair sticking up in every direction, his voice raspy as he said, "Morning, Mama." That little boy who once clung to my leg when I left for work had grown into the man who now avoided my calls. And yet, even now, even after hearing what I heard, my chest still ached with love for him. That's the part no one tells you about motherhood. Love doesn't dissolve with betrayal. It lingers, like smoke after a fire. I dressed slowly that morning, pulling on my gray cardigan, the one with loose threads on the cuffs. I sat down at the kitchen table with my notebook again. I flipped back beyond the last 5 years to the pages before. 1998, Marcus's college tuition, $2,400 first semester. I remembered it well. I had worked 3 extra shifts at the hospital that month. My feet swelled so badly I had to soak them in Epsom salt every night. But when Marcus came home with that acceptance letter, his face glowing, I swore I'd make it happen. 2001, $600 for used textbooks. I remember going without heat one month just to cover that. I'd wrapped myself in blankets and slept in the living room, space heater humming beside me. He didn't finish college. Life got in the way. But those sacrifices still lived in my bones. I wrote every detail down because numbers don't lie. Memory can blur, feelings can tangle, but ink stays honest. And if anyone ever doubted what I'd given, I wanted proof. 2005, $1,800 for first apartment deposit. 2006, $900 for car repairs. 2010, $3,000 to help Marcus and Keisha move to Atlanta. Each number was a moment, a choice. Each dollar a piece of myself. I could still see the moving truck that day in 2010. Marcus hugged me quick, already distracted with boxes. Keisha barely smiled, her mind on the drive ahead. I waved until the truck turned the corner, and then I went inside and sat on the couch, staring at the quiet house. Empty, but proud. That's how I felt. I thought back even further, to the years before Marcus was grown. When he was 5, he loved peanut butter and banana sandwiches. I'd cut them diagonally, the way he liked. Sometimes all I had was one banana to split between his lunch and my dinner. So I gave him the bigger half, always. When he was 9, he wanted to join the summer baseball team. The fee was $200. That might as well have been $2 million to me at the time. But I cleaned houses every weekend for 3 months. My hands cracked from bleach water, my back ached, but I got the money. And the look on his face when he put on that uniform, Lord, that look. That's what I lived for. When he was 15, he begged for Nike sneakers, the kind all the boys wore. I worked a double at the cafeteria, stayed on my feet 14 hours straight. My knees swelled, but I bought those shoes. The smile on his face made me forget the pain, at least for a while. Sometimes I wonder if I spoiled him. If I gave too much, too often, and didn't teach him what sacrifice really meant. Because to me, every dollar had weight. It carried my sweat, my sore muscles, my sleepless nights. But to him, maybe it was just paper. I leaned back in my chair and let my eyes wander around my little house. The curtains by the window were old but clean, patterned with faded sunflowers. The linoleum floor in the kitchen had scuffs from years of shuffling feet. The sofa sagged a little where I always sat. Simple things. Not fancy. Everything I had poured into Marcus's life. Into his dreams, his family, his children. Even when Keisha rolled her eyes at my gifts, even when she said, "We don't need charity, Eleanor," I still gave. Because it wasn't charity, it was love. But maybe I mistook silence for gratitude. Maybe I mistook taking for appreciation. I remember one night in 2021, Marcus had just lost his second job that year. He sat on my porch steps, head in his hands. "Mama, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Keisha's angry. Bills are piling up." I sat beside him, laid my hand on his back. "It's all right, baby. We'll figure it out." That week, I wrote a check for $2,000. It was nearly all I had in my emergency fund. "Don't worry about paying me back," I told him. "Just keep moving forward." He hugged me then, tight, and whispered, "Thank you, Mama. I don't know what I'd do without you." I clung to those words. I held on to them like they were gold. But now, remembering his laughter on that phone call, I wondered if he even remembered saying them. The twins, my grandchildren, are 7 now. I've bought every Christmas present, every birthday cake. Last year, $600 for a trampoline they wanted. Marcus promised he'd pay half, but he never did. Didn't matter. I paid it anyway. I thought maybe, just maybe, the trampoline would hold them here. That they'd want to play in my yard, under my eye, close to me. But they hardly come. As I wrote, the total rose higher. I added each page together, the numbers climbing. $3,500, $7,200, $5,000, $2,000, $600, $3,000, $1,800, $900, $600. I stacked them like bricks, one on top of the other, until the number loomed tall. When I reached the bottom, I wrote it clearly. Grand total, $57,900. Nearly $60,000. My breath caught. My pen trembled. I whispered the number aloud. 57,900. The sound of it filled the kitchen, echoed against the cabinets. That number wasn't just money. It was my life. I pushed the notebook aside and stared at the wall clock. The second hand ticked steady, indifferent. I thought of my mama again. How she used to say, "Eleanor, be careful how much of yourself you give. People can drown in love as surely as in water." I hadn't listened, and now here I was. Nearly 70 years old, bank account drained, dignity chipped away, overhearing my son laugh about shutting me out. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the neighbors' kids played catch, their voices rising in laughter. I pressed my hand to the glass, feeling its coolness. For the first time in a long time, I wondered who was looking out for me. Because all these years I had been pouring. And now the well inside me felt empty. And still, the people I loved most wanted more. That night, I sat at my table long after the sun went down. The streetlights buzzed on, moths circling. My phone stayed silent, no replies from Marcus or Keisha. I whispered to myself, steady as a vow, "No more, Eleanor. No more giving until there's nothing left. This time, you choose you." And with that, I closed the notebook, placed it back in the drawer, and locked it. Tomorrow, I would keep my appointment with Miss Davis. Tomorrow, I would start protecting what little I had left. But tonight, I let myself grieve, not just for money lost, but for the years, the moments, the love I had given so freely. Because love, unguarded, can sometimes cost more than money ever will. The first morning after I sent that text, I kept my phone close. Too close. I carried it from room to room as if it were a newborn. I set it beside my coffee cup, beside the sink while I washed dishes, beside me on the sofa as I folded laundry. I even carried it to the bathroom, afraid I'd miss the chime. I kept the ringer turned up, the vibration setting on high. Each time the refrigerator kicked on, my body jumped. Each time the floor creaked under my own weight, I thought it might be the sound of my phone. But the phone stayed quiet. By noon, I was pacing. By 3, I was watching the screen like it was a lifeline. By bedtime, my chest was tight with dread. Not a word from Marcus, not even a single word. Day 2, I tried to stay busy. I swept the porch, I baked cornbread, I didn't feel like eating, I pulled weeds from the little flower patch by my fence, but my hands moved without heart. My mind drifted back always to that sentence. That's all we needed. I heard it in the rhythm of the broom against the porch steps. I heard it in the scratch of weeds being pulled. I heard it even as I mixed flour and cornmeal in my glass bowl. That's all we needed. Every scrape of the spoon seemed to echo it back at me. That night, I couldn't stand it any longer. I dialed Keisha. The call went straight to voicemail. "Keisha," I said softly, "it's Eleanor. I know you're busy. I know things are tense, but I'd like to talk, please." I hung up. The silence afterward seemed louder than any noise. On the 3rd day, I didn't try calling right away. I sat in my chair by the window, the one that sagged a little from years of use. Outside, I watched children walk to school with backpacks bouncing. I watched the mailman slip envelopes into the box. I watched the wind move through the maple tree, scattering a few early leaves. And still, nothing from Marcus. The silence began to feel alive, like a thing crouched in the corner of my house, feeding on my worry. I thought back to when Marcus was 17. He stayed out late one night, later than ever before. I sat by this same window, waiting, phone clutched in my hand. When he finally walked in at 2 in the morning, I didn't yell. I just cried. He stood there awkwardly, guilty, and finally hugged me. Now, decades later, I was still waiting by the window. Only this time, the hug never came. I tried to distract myself. I pulled out a box of old photographs from the closet. The cardboard was soft from age, the corners splitting. Inside were snapshots of another life. Marcus on his first day of kindergarten, holding a backpack nearly bigger than he was. Marcus at 10, holding up a fish he caught, grin wide. Marcus at 15, blowing out candles on a cake I had worked 2 extra shifts to buy. I held each photo as if it were fragile glass. I traced my finger over his smile, the shape of his hairline, the way his eyes always lit up. Then I thought of the man on that phone call, the one who chuckled about shutting me out. The contrast hurt like a knife. That afternoon, the phone finally lit up. My heart leapt, only to fall again when I saw the name. Telemarketer. I almost laughed. The world still wanted things from me, but not the people I wanted to hear from. By evening of the 3rd day, my chest ached from the weight of unspoken words. I stood at the sink again, staring at the plate rack, the same spot where I'd first overheard them. I whispered aloud, though no one was there to hear me. "Why, Marcus? Why couldn't you just come to me? I would have understood. I would have tried." My voice cracked. The sound startled me. I pressed my hand over my mouth, as if I could shove the pain back inside. But pain doesn't stay quiet. It seeps out one way or another. That night, I dreamed of my late husband, John. In the dream, he was young again, standing at the end of our old driveway with a toolbox in his hand. He waved at me the way he used to after fixing the car, grease smudged on his cheek. "You're stronger than you think, Eleanor," he said. His voice was steady, calm. I reached out, but he was gone. I woke with tears on my pillow. The 3rd day ended much like the first, me in my chair by the window, staring at the dark street. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. The hum of crickets filled the night. My phone lay silent on the table beside me. No call, no text, just silence. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. The silence was no longer just absence, it was also clarity. If Marcus and Keisha could so easily leave me hanging, if they could so quickly forget all I had given, then maybe it was time I stopped waiting for them to do right. Maybe it was time I did right by myself. I whispered the words aloud, steady and sure. "No more begging, Eleanor. Tomorrow you move forward." And for the first time in days, my heart felt like it had a direction. The morning after the 3rd day of silence, I woke early. I didn't need an alarm. The weight of the decision I was about to make stirred me awake, as if the world itself was nudging me out of bed. I dressed in my simple navy dress, the one I wore for Sunday mornings, the one that always made me feel a little more dignified, even in the face of disappointment. I had made my choice. The appointment with Ms. Davis was at 10 a.m., but I left at 8:30. I didn't want to risk running late. Something about the drive, the time alone in the car, felt like an act of courage. I watched the street as I drove, the houses lining either side of me, the familiar trees swaying in the morning breeze. It all seemed normal. It all seemed like the same life I'd always known, but beneath it, everything had shifted. When I pulled into the parking lot of the law office, I felt the familiar flutter in my chest, part anxiety, part anticipation. The building was small but elegant, with large glass windows and a sign that read, Law Offices of Davis and Associates. The door swung open as I entered, and a woman with dark cropped hair greeted me at the front desk. "Miss Eleanor, good to see you," she said, standing up and extending her hand. "Miss Davis will be with you shortly. Please make yourself comfortable." I sat in the waiting area, flipping through an old magazine, but my mind was far from the articles about travel and fashion. I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus, about how, after all these years, he had stopped looking at me like family and started seeing me as an obligation. I hadn't realized until now just how deeply that hurt. After a few minutes, Miss Davis walked in, tall and elegant as always. She greeted me warmly, but I could sense a shift in her posture, as though she recognized the gravity of the situation I was walking into. "Eleanor, I'm so glad you could make it today," she said, guiding me into her office. It was a cozy space with dark mahogany furniture and shelves lined with books. Ms. Davis sat behind a large desk, pulling out a file. "I've looked over your situation," she began, her voice smooth and professional. "From what you've told me on the phone, it seems like you've been very generous with your son and his family, and now you're looking to put some boundaries in place." I nodded, trying to gather my thoughts. "Yes, Miss Davis, I've spent a lifetime giving, and now I need to think about myself. I've made some decisions, but I need your help to make sure they're legal." Miss Davis leaned forward, her pen poised above the legal pad. "We can certainly do that. Let's start with your financial situation. We'll need to remove Marcus as an authorized beneficiary on your account and set up some protections around your remaining assets." I glanced at the file on her desk, wondering what she saw when she looked at it. A vulnerable, aging woman? A mother broken by love? Or something stronger, someone who had reached the point of no return? "I also want to open a new account," I said, my voice steady. "One that Marcus can't touch. I need something for myself. I need to make sure that if anything happens, I'll have enough to take care of myself." Ms. Davis nodded, taking notes. "That's a wise move, Eleanor. We can help you with that. We'll open a new account and transfer a portion of your savings into it. This way, Marcus won't have access to it. You'll have a financial buffer, and we'll also adjust your will to reflect your wishes." I left her office feeling a mix of relief and uncertainty. It wasn't done yet, but it was a start. As I drove to the bank, I thought about all the years I'd spent living in service to others. I'd built a life of care and support for my family, but in doing so, I'd sacrificed my own security. I wondered if I'd made the right choice, wondering if they would come back, if Marcus would realize what he'd lost. But the truth settled deeper within me. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I had spent so much time trying to make them happy, trying to prove I was still useful. But now I was simply trying to protect the one thing I had left, my peace of mind. The bank felt cold when I walked in, the air conditioned too tightly, the fluorescent lights too bright. I was met by a friendly teller named Brenda, who smiled warmly but quickly turned to business when I explained what I needed. "I'd like to open a new savings account, please," I said. "And I need to transfer $15,000 from my old account." Brenda looked at me curiously. "Of course, Miss Eleanor. Would you like a separate debit card for this new account?" "Yes," I replied. "Please. And I'd like the statements to be sent to my post office box. I don't want anyone to know about it." Brenda nodded, typing into the system. "Absolutely, Miss Eleanor. I'll take care of that for you." As she worked, I felt a slight unease in my chest, but it was different now. This was no longer a transaction. This was about securing my future. After the transfer was made, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. There was still work to be done, but at least I knew that I had started the process of securing myself, of putting up the walls that would protect what I had left. As I left the bank, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the glass door. The woman staring back at me was not the helpless mother or the victim of a family's neglect. She was someone who had learned to stand up for herself. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking through the local park, enjoying the cool breeze, the scent of wet grass after a brief rainstorm. I didn't have a particular destination in mind. I just wanted to breathe, to allow myself some space to feel free. I walked past families, couples, elderly men and women sitting on benches with their hats tipped against the sun. The world kept moving, but for the first time, I felt as though I was moving with it, not behind it. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, the new account papers in front of me. I knew that I would need to update my will to make sure my assets were divided according to my wishes. But tonight, I was content to let the dust settle. I had taken the first step. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life again. I wake up on Sunday with a tightness in my chest. The house smells like damp wood and coffee brewing. Outside, the sky is gray, clouds heavy like they're holding secrets. I set the table carefully, plates stacked, silverware aligned, candles unlit but ready. Every little detail matters. Every little detail is a boundary. Marcus texts at 4:15 p.m. "Mom, we'll be there by 6. Hope you're okay." I don't reply. Not yet. I want them to feel the weight of anticipation. By 5:45 p.m., the rain has started, soft at first, then tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. I hear footsteps crunching on the driveway. My stomach knots. I straighten my back, smooth the tablecloth, even though it wrinkles beneath my hands. When they walk in, Keisha smiles too brightly. Marcus avoids my eyes. I hold mine steady. "Hi, Mom," he says, voice careful. I nod. "Hello, let's sit." The dining room is quiet, except for the hum of the overhead light. I serve the roast chicken, vegetables, and mashed potatoes, watching as they fill their plates. Every movement is deliberate, every glance measured. "Mom, we were thinking maybe," Marcus starts. I cut him off. "I'm not here for thinking. I'm here for honesty." Keisha fidgets with her napkin. "Eleanor, it's complicated. We never meant to hurt you." "Complicated," I repeat, slow, letting the words sink. "Let me remind you of clarity then. Clarity in numbers." I set down a small notepad. $2,500 for the renovations, $1,200 for furniture, $3,000 for your first vacation after the new job, remember? Total 5-year contributions, $45,000 from my savings. Every penny given, every sacrifice made, and yet... I pause, looking at Marcus's eyes. "You plan to exclude me from the house." Marcus swallows hard. "Mom, it's not exactly like that. We thought..." "You thought," I echo, voice firm, calm, "that I wouldn't notice? That I would just watch quietly as my years of work and care are ignored?" Keisha opens her mouth. I raise a hand. "No, not now." I take a breath, and the room is heavy with tension. The chicken steams, the mashed potatoes sit like tiny clouds on our plates, but all I see are the numbers, the ledger of trust. "I want you to understand the weight of this," I continue. "I gave $2,500 in March 2019, $1,200 in July 2020, $3,000 in November 2021. I totaled it over 5 years. That's $45,000. And now you wanna... What? Pretend it doesn't exist?" Marcus's hand trembles slightly over his fork. "Mom, I didn't know how much you kept track of." I lean in. "I keep track because I care, and because I trusted you, and that trust isn't a tool to be manipulated." Keisha whispers, "Eleanor, please, we can fix this. We can..." "No, Keisha, this isn't about fixing anything. It's about boundaries. It's about respect." I push my chair back slightly, letting the authority in my posture speak. "I've consulted Miss Davis. I opened a new account with $20,000 of my savings. Removed all beneficiary access. My money is mine. I will choose where it goes. You will respect that." Marcus finally meets my eyes, shame and regret tangled together. I didn't realize. I was careless. I didn't mean..." Intentions are irrelevant when actions betray. I say softly, each word deliberate. I'm done being quiet. The house is your responsibility. The money I gave is my legacy, not your entitlement. Do you understand? A long silence stretches. Even the rain seems to pause outside. I see Marcus nod slowly and Keisha lowers her gaze. Neither says a word for several heartbeats. I let them sit with it, let them feel the weight. Finally Marcus whispers, "Yes, Mom, I understand. I'm sorry." I nod. I hear you. But sorry doesn't undo years of trust. It doesn't rewrite the ledger. You must act differently from now on. I am still your mother, but I am also Eleanor, and Eleanor will be protected. Dinner continues quietly. Forks scrape plates. The roast grows cold. I notice the candle wax has dripped slightly onto the tablecloth. I let it be, because control isn't about perfection. It's about presence, awareness, boundaries. Afterward, I clear the dishes with steady hands. I don't retreat. I don't cry. I feel calm in my conviction. They linger a moment longer, avoiding eye contact. Then they leave. I don't follow. I let the door close behind them. The rain patters harder now, a rhythm that matches my pulse, steady and sure. I sit alone at the table, fingerprints on the mug I forgot to rinse. The room smells faintly of garlic and chicken. I let the quiet settle. The confrontation is done. The words have been said, the boundaries drawn. I light the stove kettle for tea, watching the steam curl. Outside the rain continues, relentless but cleansing. I sip slowly. I am firm. I am calm. I am in control. The rain has stopped. Puddles shimmer like tiny mirrors across the park path as I step carefully on the wet leaves. My coat is damp at the shoulders, and I tuck my hands into the pockets, feeling the warmth of the wool. The world smells of fresh earth and rain, and for the first time in days, I feel something like lightness in my chest. I find a bench near the fountain, worn wood smooth under my palms. I sip the tea I brought from home, steam curling in the cool air. Around me, children laugh as their parents chase after them, dogs shake off water, and an old man feeds pigeons with meticulous care. Life goes on. Life always goes on. I pull out my notebook, the one I've started keeping since the confrontation. I write slowly, listing small victories. New account opened with $20,000. Safe, untouched. Beneficiary access removed. Autonomy regained. Consulted Miss Davis. Will secured. Boundaries firmly established with Marcus and Keisha. The list feels grounding. Every word is a brick in a wall I've built to protect myself. A jogger passes, splashing water across the puddles, and I chuckle softly, reminded that small disturbances can't shake me anymore. Later at church, I sit in the back pew, hands folded, head bowed. The familiar scent of incense and old wood fills me with quiet comfort. Sister Joanne comes over, resting a hand on my shoulder. "Eleanor, you've been through a lot. Are you holding up?" I nod. "I am. Slowly, but I am." She smiles, eyes kind. "Remember, love isn't just about giving. Sometimes it's about holding on to yourself." I think about Marcus, about Keisha, about the ledger of $45,000 spread across 5 years, each dollar a testament to care, hope, trust. I think about the new account, the phone call to Miss Davis, the firm voice I used at the table. I feel strength in knowing I can love without losing myself. That evening, I prepare a small meal for myself. A simple salad, a piece of baked salmon, tea steeping in a delicate cup. I sit by the window, watching the last hints of sunset glow on wet pavement. I feel my shoulders release tension I didn't know I was holding. I am Eleanor. I am protected. I am whole. A text pings. It's Darnell. "Want to take a walk tomorrow? Feels like the world's clearing up." I smile, fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing. "Yes, let's walk. The world is still here." I close my eyes for a moment, letting the quiet fill me. The betrayal, the hurt, the anger, they are still there, but they no longer rule me. I have created space for calm, for joy, for dignity. I lift my teacup to the light, watching the steam dance. I think of my husband, long gone, who always said, "Courage is quiet, Eleanor. Not loud, not flashy, quiet." And now, sitting alone, sipping tea, feeling the warmth in my chest, I understand. I have courage, I have boundaries, I have peace. And I know this. Protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary.